Greetings, Darklings. From across the interweb, it is once again I, the Duchess, Precious Ken, here for the Sounds and Shadows podcast. And as always, we have a very exciting show today. I am geeked for. Before we get into that, I did receive in my hot little fingers a unboxing where anytime someone sends me something, we got to have it on the show, and then I got to review it and talk about it. But from Florida, it's an album that was sent to me for a starry night, and even kind enough to autograph. And this is just gorgeous, like synth poppy pastel art. This is the actual album cover for Here Lies. So I will probably, after this interview, throw that on the record player and give it a spin. But thank you so much for sending that over. And everyone should check out this album, but I will make sure after giving it, I've heard this before, but given another listen, I will write something up for this to shout out A Starry Night. So this one is a long time coming, and I'm really geeked for this. I've been talking quite a bit. This is a band that has had a single that has been charted in the Sounds and Shadows Dark Scene single chart twice recently. They had two different singles, and now they have a new album that's going to be coming out soon, some exciting tour things for us to talk about, and just a dear and wonderful human that I met at Cold Waves, I think, for the first time in, I want to say 2019. Without further ado, from the band Silverwalks, Dan McCullough. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ken.
Dan,
we've come a long way since that dumpster, huh?
We did. We met at a dumpster, like the trash that we are. That's glorious.
For anyone who might be weirded out by that, if you've ever been to the Metro in Chicago, smoking area is right next to where the trash is. So it's maybe a little.
And the food, strangely enough. There's like the food trucks, the smoking, the picnic tables, and just a bunch of dumpsters for all of us dumpster babies to hang out in. So I'm really geeked for this. I've talked to you about this album coming up for a long time, and the first time I heard the opening single off it, Lantern, I was hooked. Where has this been? And I've just been really excited to see it go. And this has been an album that's been a long time coming, which I really like. It never felt rushed. I really had this sense that you were going to do whatever it took to have this be exactly what you wanted it to be. And whatever amount of time that took, F the world. That's what you were going to do. And I don't think that's something that always happens nowadays, because there is this TikTok, YouTube, constant Spotify pressure to crank out material or be forgotten and not take your time to let it happen. So why don't we start out? Tell me a little bit about what was the process, and tell our listeners who maybe are unfamiliar, what was your history that brought you up to this album?
Cool. So, I guess starting at the start, I think I always knew that I was going to be involved in the arts in some form or fashion. Initially, I thought I was going to be a writer. And then social media happened, and I realized that not everything I think is that profound. So perhaps that went by the wayside until I think a bit more about it. I may never be cut out for Twitter, alas. But I had always, I had been working as a DJ, and a lot of people who start off as fans then kind of progress into spinning music. And then I had always wanted to start my own band, but after a couple of false starts, I just figured it wasn't in the cards. So there was a goth industrial night that had started in my hometown after I got back from college in Chicago. And I had never thought that a goth industrial night would fly there. Otherwise, I might have done it myself. but I met these characters, Eric, DJ Kiltboy, and Dave Gould, and not only did it fly, it's still flying. It has been filling the venue for 15 years now, which is fantastic. And I made a bunch of friends there and promoted shows, things I wanted to see, primarily because in this kind of music, a lot of the time, if you aren't making it happen for yourself, it might not happen.
Right.
So, as he has for many other people, at one of these gigs, it was a Assemblage 23 show. Stephen Archer came over to me, and
that guy.
Yeah, that guy.
That fucking guy.
He came over to me and said, "Hey, Dan," and he has a talent for cutting through bullshit, right? So he came over to me and said, "Dan, you clearly want to be doing this. Why aren't you doing this?" And he fucking got me. I had no answer for that, so I did it, and this time it worked out. The first time, just kind of feeling around it, seeing if the things that were being made were something that kind of carried emotion and a bit of a vision, was we did a clubbier EP, which was called Songs in Love and Hate, and that had more of a dance vibe to it, but I kept, again, putting off making the record. I don't know, fear of failure or just being busy. And then I had moved to Atlanta to take a job, and the pandemic hit. And I sat down and said, well, I'm never going to have more free time than right now. So what would it look like if I sat down and gave it full fucking effort, maximum, as much as I could put into it? And that, a year and a half later, the end result is the record Various Positions that will be in your hands on August 3rd.
I mean, it's in my hands. I'm ready. But it could be in everybody's hands, and it should. I do have these albums that I just get so geeked about. I feel like maybe sometimes I overtalk. Like, I want to share the love of everything I'm listening to, but sometimes I do get fixated. And yours for this year has been one of those records where I just can't stop talking about it, because it just has, I don't know, like something fresh, like that mixture of hard industrial and Tatooine, like, desert war space opera. And it just, I don't know, like there's something about those things coming together in form that I hear it and I say to myself, why haven't 20 people already done this before now? But they haven't.
That's really flattering. Thank you. I don't think it'll ever be quite as frightening to do again, he says, before he does it again. But the thing that people seem to be shocked by is how different Various Positions is from the EP. And I mean, the EP was dedicated to be a tribute to a certain dance music sound from my entirely wasted youth. And whereas Various Positions, I mean, it's a record about crisis situations in life, some mine, some other people's. And like crises, one of the few things that all crisis has in common is it's more intense for some people than others. They handle it differently. Different experiences can be considered a crisis for different people, depending on how you're able to handle them. Sure. And some things are things you can talk about while they're happening. Other things are things that until you have a bit of distance from what happened or what the situation was, you need space from it. And that's the unifying theme of Various Positions. So there is that hard industrial sound. There is some experimental music. There's a lot more noise, and there are even a couple of pure pop moments on there, like In Consequence is synth pop in an anthemic kind of way. So I knew that I had already done the EP sound, and whatever I was going to do with the record, it was not going to be that.
See,
So
that's something I really enjoy about it is I love me some industrial music. I'm an old school industrial fan, but if I had to take one shot that I think is as a genre could be better, is industrial music a lot of times tends to make whole albums, even the greats, Front 242, Ministry, that all have the same vibe, sound, song to song.
mhm.
You're kind of chomp, 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 one thing. And this, to your point, wasn't that. It really does touch on the broader prism of what has fractured from industrial into EDM, IDM, EMB, all the different aspects of it, and still falling a bit under that industrial blanket.
Sure, and it was getting back to an experimental attitude in the sense that when people buy records these days, they know what they're going to get, and while I guess something can be said for knowing that you're going to get something that you like, I
Sure.
miss being challenged. And industrial music, once upon a time, was an extremely challenging kind of encounter. You wouldn't always know what you were going to get. It could literally be anything. I think I read somewhere that the initial idea for Pigface was Bill Rieflin and Martin Atkins going out and putting a chair on stage and walking off. Like it's a concept, and it's one that isn't afraid to take risks. And I just, if I had any criticism for industrial music, it would be that there aren't enough people taking genuine risks.
Sure.
It's very, very easy to get the tunnel vision with the thing that works, rather than pushing yourself to find something new.
I mean, I wouldn't even say that's an industrial, that they have a
That's just a
monopoly
life
on that.
thing,
That's
man.
just
Yeah.
art and music in general. It's real easy to do another, 80s cover and know that everybody's going to give a giant thumbs up and run to the dance floor,
Right.
and how do you not do that and try and break away? And it's scary too. But at the same time, it's the thing that matters most.
Right, because that's where you start to find things that are unique to you, I think. And um, that was the idea. Like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now, and let's push. Let's go down the road less traveled and see where it leads.
So I think going along with that, one of the things that really I like hearing you say that uniquely you, and you took time with this album, as you said, over the course of several years to, tweak every bit, like be a bit of a perfectionist and really find this. What do you think about this record as opposed to all the things that, like you said, you're a DJ, you're a fan of this music, and you have it in your heart. And so that's obviously, those influences are shown a bit in your album. But what about this new thing is uniquely you, that you feel you did or had something to say that was fresh?
That is a great question.
A hard one too. I'm throwing
Is
fastballs at you today.
well, I think there are a couple of things that I could say here, but I'm going to take a great big swig of beer first.
Have that. I'm going to open a second one.
So the first thing would be that in this batch of Silverwalk songs, there initially were about 30 pieces, and the reason there were so many is that unlike the previous record where I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do,
Mhm.
this one I sat down, and this actually came from improvisation and live performance, where I would find a vibe and let it develop, playing actually playing live, or working in something like Ableton, which is about as live as electronic music can get.
Right.
So it was taking these ideas and developing all of them and seeing which ones breathed. rather than aiming for a vibe? Which ones decided after whittling through them all, which ones were the core of the idea?
Yeah.
The second idea that I would have there, we have a fucking extremely punk rock attitude. We will play a basement. We will go do anything DIY if we can. So we don't have a whole lot of expectations around okay, they're going to have to be these kind of people there, and they're going to be these kind of accoutrements or sound system, or this is how it's going to go. No, we're going out to experience an event as much as you are.
Sure.
There is that kind of gung-ho DIY attitude. And finally, I think that we have a bit of, and this is where I put my pompous, pretentious hat on.
I always have mine on. I never take it off. Not even for a moment.
I think that if I had one major criticism of of industrial music right now, it's that the lyrics aren't great. They aren't. They're talking about things to be extreme and hardcore, and sure. Whereas in the initial waves, this was it was valid because that was shit that these people were going through at the time.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pose being copped. So we pay a lot of attention to our lyrics to make sure they aren't trite, to make sure that we're getting across what we want to get across. And I just don't see that in a lot of bands in general, especially.
I was going to say that. I don't think that's an industrial thing again. I think that's something that's tough across all genres in the dark scene and what we're doing. I love hearing you say that too, the punk rock DIY aspects of it, because it kind of reminds me, I had an interview not that long ago with a good friend of yours, Mark of Choke Chain.
That
very much has, to me, bringing back hardcore punk into industrial. And I love that. I think you two kind of have that same heart about how you approach
very different
music.
sounds.
Very different sounds.
They are very similar in approach and value. Yeah, I would say. And he has a great sound, doesn't he? He's like fucking early pounding leather strip.
Yeah. I think the other thing too about Mark that kills me is, like, when I interviewed him, you see him play live, and it is the most frightening, meanest, like someone literally ripping their own heart out, squeezing their hand and throwing it in the audience's face. And then you talk to him, he's like, "Oh, hi, Ken, how's it going? Yeah, no, it's good to talk to you too." And it's just kind of this cool, like, soft-spoken, laid-back guy. But then you get him on stage, and you're like,
get him on
this
stage,
fucking demon just unleashed bile and fire on me, you know?
Yeah, and you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, music is my release, art is my release." You don't have to ask Mark if music is his release. You'll be convinced by seeing.
You're gonna be wearing it by the time the show's over.
Yeah, I mean, by the time he's sweated all over you after he fucking leaps out into the crowd, you'll get it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I think this segues nicely into another thing I really want to talk about you. Usually, I try not to go too deep in this on this show, but one of the things I really love about you and a lot of artists to this point, take Mark, or like electronic substance abuse, Jamie, or the way that hard industrial or electronic music is getting political again, like punk rock, like old punk rock. And whether that's through the music, which I feel some of that, and kind of, I don't know, almost have, like, on some of your songs, like Jesus rampaging, toppling over the bankers, tables in the middle of the bazaar feel. But at the same time, on your social media, on the standard that you hold to yourself and others in the scene, I love that about you, that you wear that on your sleeve and make it a part of who you are. How important do you think that is, that political aspect, not just in the art that you're making, but also the standard you hold to the artists that you would want to play with, would want to go see, want to support?
Well, this is Man, there are some landmines in this question.
There are, but that's just it. Like, I feel comfortable asking you this because you're not shy about stuff like this. You wear your feelings on your sleeve pretty openly.
Yeah, and that I think is really the only way to be, because ultimately you're not going to please everyone. There are people out there who view making music and art as entertainment.
Sure.
And if you view yourself as an entertainer, you might want to be anodyne. You might not want to talk about these kind of things. But again, this is where the pretentious hat. I am just stuffy enough to consider myself an artist. So these are the things that I need to talk about. These are the things that I think are important. Yeah. Without necessarily being so direct about it that it's not going to be relevant or able to be understood in 20 years. Sure. But if you were to ask me, I would say that the political attitude of Silverwalks runs through the whole thing. We live in an extremely strange time. We are at a point in human history where we could fuck it all up. And feasibly, it's not going great.
It's super possible. I really do think that there is a chance that at 44 years old, the world might not outlast me. And I don't know that people before me really had that feeling as much.
No. This is something that I was laughing with Mark Heel once. He was like, "Yeah, well, at least you didn't grow up with the Cold War." I'm like, well, spoke too soon.
Oops.
But again, getting back to the question, that political attitude runs through everything. It's part because I think I fucked up a lot in my youth. I made a lot of mistakes, and I think a lot of people have. Unlike many people, though, I think I learned from them.
Right. That's the key.
Those things are things that matter to me. You know, I care. I don't want to be a dick. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to ostracize or make people who are part of marginalized groups feel like they have to fear me. And I see that more and more. And the older brother in me comes out, and I just want to say, no, this isn't okay. We're not going back. And it was a real shock through the Trump years to realize that while it is safer to be weird than it ever has been before, that does not equal safe.
Right.
And with the rise of the far right, with the rise of all these other things, again, industrial music was extremely political once. I'm pretty sure, but not pretty sure. You can look at something like Nitzareb, you can look at something like Sisters of Mercy or Ministry before they took a turn. And
Die Warsaw, like a lot of, I mean, there's a ton of examples of, yes.
These things have to be talked about in the sense that that we have a platform. And I'll tell you a story here once. I'm not gonna name names for the people that might come across poorly here, but we played a gig once, and we showed some of the Charlottesville footage. We have a song called "Our Season on Fire" that is about, among other songs of ours that are about this, that are about the rise of the far right in America again. And we were like, well, you know what? The Nazis, they don't look like jackbooted thugs anymore. They look like a bunch of chuds that just walked out of Abercrombie. They're all nicely cut, and they've got
with their polo shirts,
their little polo shirts, and their shitty attitudes. And so we're like, this is what Nazis look like now. They could look like anybody. Right. And after that, a promoter came up to us afterwards and was like, "You do realize that you could have been arrested for incitement to riot." Like, okay. And if I was an entertainer, that would really, really bother me. But this is the point where I have to put my foot down and say, for anybody we may alienate that way, they're not the kind of people I want there in the first place, right. If that makes any sense. And explicitly making it clear to people that this is a place where you can come as you are, and you can come be yourself, and you will be safe and okay. That's important to me. because I didn't have that when I was young, and I think I made a lot of bad choices, and a lot of shit in my own worldview wound up getting really fucked up by not realizing that it's out there. You just have to go find it.
Right.
So it's important to me to make those kind of environments. And, you know, in the band, there are other people who fucked up, drank too much, did too many drugs, whatever. None of us are now. We're all old. All that happened 20 years ago. But
none of us were born saints or anything. And like you said, it's about
correct.
Never making mistakes. It's about how you own them, how you learn from them, and how you do better, you know? And I think that's kind of, you know, one of the things you're saying in the big takeaway. And as us two freaking white boys here talking, 40-year-old white boys talking, like you said, a safe place where I had on eyeliner and, you know, dress and everything. But I could always just wash that shit off and put on a polo shirt myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
And not everybody has that option for when they're trying to find a safe place and fit in. And being able to understand and acknowledge that is,
I mean, this music was born from Test Department playing Under the Fucking Bridge, if you're brave enough to go. And if that's not it, you were going to a gay club to hear it.
Right.
So yeah, that's the attitude. And that's important to the idea of Silver Walks. It's something that's dear to me, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. One thing that I will say is that while we talk about all these fucked up things that happen, all these terrible traumas, in order to make our own argument better and figure out a path forward, I would say that something we need to start talking about just as much is, what does forgiveness look like? What does redemption look like? Because it's very easy for people to put us aside and say, oh, they just think they're better than everybody. No, I've just been there. And I just want to, I think it's something that we could very easily be called hypocrites about. So it's something that we need to think about just as much as, you know, getting the bad guy, so to speak.
Right. I think kind of going to that too, the whole idea of when people talk about cancel culture or, you know, accountability on this stuff, the big thing is people aren't getting canceled so much for making a mistake. What you get canceled for is making a mistake, and then when someone gives you feedback, you double down on it and then probably triple down on it without just saying, I wonder why that person told me what I did was fucked up and hurt them, and stopping to take 5 seconds to self-reflect on that. Those are people that are getting canceled, not ones that make mistakes, because we all do that.
Yeah, and I did that a lot when I discovered I was neurodivergent in a bunch of ways later in life.
Sure.
When you're south of Pittsburgh in 1987, you don't have a word for that. You're just a freak.
Yeah.
And that's another way that the world has changed. We have a vocabulary to work around these things now.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say there, I don't really believe cancel culture exists. All cancel culture exists is being held accountable
for your crap.
Yeah.
Right.
And the thing is that a lot of people, instead of hearing, hey, maybe I should wonder, am I doing this for the right reasons? Like, is this an okay thing to do? They get defensive. And
am I protecting freedom or just being an asshole?
Right. I've had all manner of names thrown at me because I defended certain scenes in Game of Thrones. Now that's a free speech thing, and something that is, I find it odd that it's an untenably right-wing position to be a free speech advocate these days. You're going to, by nature, wind up talking about a lot of weird, gross, terrible shit that you don't believe in.
Right.
When you're still talking about free speech. And that doesn't mean that the other side of that argument is right, and I can go out and call people all whatever slurs I want, and I can be a total a-hole. Freedom of speech. Well, right. Yeah, but everyone's going to think you're a dick. So I think that we need to start having these situations and these strange, these weird contradictions, and we need to start talking about them more, because I think people see it in too black and white perspective than I'm personally comfortable with.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just outright, but so often people will be like, oh, well, if you don't agree with me 100%, then you're the enemy, and discourse is gone. Confirmation bias is the name of the game. So
I love that we got to kind of discuss some of the, no, I think this is great. And I love when we get a chance to have a conversation like this, especially in an intelligent way that hopefully forwards that discussion. I do want to get a chance to, because we do have some time limits. We can always come back and do this again, but I want to get to talking about some more things about both the album and about what you have coming up, because you have a couple of exciting shows and things like that I really want to touch on to make people aware of.
Sure.
So the first thing I want to do is, normally when I do these interviews, I love to ask the question to artists, what are you listening to right now? And kind of go through a couple of those. But I want to change that up for you, because you do something that I just had a talk with Pete Burns of Kill Shelter, who just put out an amazing album that just blew my mind. It was incredible. And he used a different vocalist. He wrote the lyrics and wrote the songs for it, but used a different vocalist on every single track. And I love that. And you also highlight, I feel like, bringing in a lot of guest contributors. So instead, if we could kind of go through some of the tracks on your album and you talk a little bit about some of who these contributors were, and maybe shine a little light on them too, because I love the sense of community that you put together on this record.
And that is something that it's not a flex. It's not a thing like where I went out and said, okay, I'm going to throw $10,000 at this person. And it all happened organically. And that's why I felt okay with it. I would love to.
Let's start out, before we even get into the music. You had your logo and cover art is the same person who did the logo and cover art for both Sounds and Shadows and Amaranth, the industrial scene legend, Jim Marcus. How did you make that happen?
Oh my God. Well, it's funny. A couple of folks that I grew up with wound up joining his band and becoming Go Fight. And I knew these folks from when I went to college in Chicago. And just through the friend network, I wound up meeting Jim, and we got along really well. He's a really intelligent guy. Just laughably creative in the sense that,
also just the nicest dude and so humble and easy to know.
Yeah. I think the world of Jim, and I hope that he's as pleased with how all of this happened as I did. I haven't seen him in a little while. I should call him.
He's been going through a couple health things and kind of laying low a little bit, but it's still, anything that he ever puts out is always brilliant. And again, he's one of those people that truly, starting out in industrial, to me, at a time when industrial was very much like macho, get some girls together and some brewskis, like had that flavor. I feel like he was one of the people that was very open about turning that on its head and showing that industrial music could be something else, could be something more sensitive.
Very much so. He is a ludicrously creative guy, and if we're talking about senses of community, he is someone who works very hard to create one around what he does. Yeah. And it isn't that macho stuff. It's very thoughtful, considered, intelligent music, and yeah. He's a great dude. He actually, I'm waiting on a mix of his for this record. I'll tell you that I sent him a remix once I sent him a track to remix, and he straight up sent me another track with him singing it, which was
That's incredible.
Fucking mind-boggling. Like that was really cool.
So next up, let's jump ahead a little bit and talk about Stella. Tell me a little about how they came to be a part of this.
Well, it's funny because Stella and Coral both came to be a part of this in the exact same way. I love going back to that sense of community and collaboration. I love doing remixes. I love taking a song and turning it on its head or turning it into something different. My only particular rule when I'm doing a remix, unlike when I did a little production work for you, which was more kind of trying to bring out your sound rather than my.
Sure. I love that though. It was so different from what I was expecting or where I thought you were going to go with it. So that's going to be on our up and coming Amaranth album, Gothamist. You will be able to hear Silverwalk's remix on there.
With Stella and Coral, I had done remixes for them, and they wound up liking the music so much they were like, you know what? Forget this other track. I want to write a song to this. And who am I to say no? So they did that, and Stella has since become a good friend, and so has Coral. She was actually up in New York. I went over and met her the other day, and it was just a very good time, and that's how it came to be.
I'll make sure to put for Stella and Cora, so both their individual projects. I'll put those links in when we release the interview as well.
Sounds great.
Another person on here, see, you had so many Sounds and Shadows people and friends, but you had Tim and Mark Heel and James Francis, a bunch of those people. Just tell me, kind of go through and let me know some of the Eva X I know you had on here. I love freaking Gabby. She has a big, show coming up here for, I think it's Terminus, right?
I met Gabby in Calgary. I went up for Terminus, and I got fucking shit hammered drunk. I was so drunk. I had like a $230 tab. I was just fucking handing out drinks. But we became friends. She was a little bit shy. She's a little bit younger than we are, and was like, I'm new, and fuck it, everybody starts somewhere, and we just became friends. So the thing that I wanted her to do, and this plays into Mark as well, because she was doing a lot of synth pop stuff. Gabby's a metalhead. Gabby
know that
fucking rock.
That's awesome. Which makes sense. That I bet her and Eric get together and just like crush Labatt's blues and freaking listen to dark metal. I could see that.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? How about I have this instrumental track that I'm working on. How about you get in here and get all metal fucking shield burden on me, and I'm going to turn your vocals into sounding like a fucking dragon. And she was like, sign me up. And that's how it happened. With Mark, we had actually done a gig together. And we had opened for ChemLab and CTEC when they toured. So Mark came over and we started talking and we became friends. I had just moved to San Francisco and he had just moved to San Francisco. So he invited me over for dinner. We got along famously. We're still buddies. I had this synth pop track that I kept trying to find the vocal on and just couldn't. Took me weeks. He was like, let me see what you got. No promises. Would you believe that, guy? The very next morning, I went to bed and woke up, and that song was in my inbox.
Some people just have that ability that they can't stop themselves.
And I understand that. I mean, for me, a lot of the creative stuff is I'm not a trained musician. I'm a real two-finger virtuoso, but I am extremely experienced with computers and programming. I'm working on that. So aside from singing, I'm not much of a musician. However, I think like with a lot of creativity, sometimes this stuff comes from somewhere else, and your job is to get out of the way. So
exactly.
Yeah. So with that, it was meant to be. So I just let it go. He actually he introduced me as well to Reese Fulber, who did a remix that was just fantastic on that.
I'm sorry, Reese. I'm not familiar. Is that someone in the scene, or they've made some music before?
I think he played with the Oilers, like the Edmonton Oilers.
I think, yeah. I think when Guy Bear was the goalie, I think Reese was the frontline defenseman, right? That was
it was either that or he was the guy that wrote Der Kommissar. I don't know.
Wow. Speaking of living legends that are featured on this album, I noticed there was some guy named John Fryer on there.
Yes, and this has a couple of funny stories. So during the aforementioned San Francisco trip, Rex Arcana and I, Rex Arcana is, Mr. Big and Important. He's also from my hometown in Pennsylvania.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we wound up, among other things, we geeked out about that and became very good friends. And I met him for dinner.
Did you talk about like the local burger joint and, stuff like that, like from back in the day when you were growing up kids in the same hometown?
We definitely talk a lot about Turkey Hill iced tea. When we met for dinner out there, someone who came with us, Liz from Vor Aurora, who is awesome and someone I would love to work with, and did work with on the EP. She did a remix for us. It was very haunting. It was really cool. But the other person that came with us was Christian from Cop International. And he is a fucking sweetheart as well.
Super nice dude.
Yeah, totally.
And
nice.
His wife is an incredible baker. I see all the pictures of her pastries, and it makes me want to go out to California just to eat the pastries. Like he's always, hey, Ken, music this and this band and blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but tell me again about those pastries.
Well, the nice thing about Jackie, too, is that she'll laugh at all my hip hop jokes that Rex and Christian miss. So in any case, we went out to dinner and I met Christian. And funnily enough, the world, fate, kept putting Christian in my way. So I bought a bunch of shelves off of Craigslist, and the person that came to drop them off, wouldn't you know, it was Christian Petke. So I started asking around because I wanted to kind of learn from someone who knew what they were doing. Because a lot of what I do is self-taught. So Christian, eventually, we did a podcast together. He introduced me to John, who very graciously offered for a small sum of money to mix the record. And he's a sweetheart, total nice guy, completely unassuming.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking,
especially when you look at that guy's freaking catalog.
Yeah, it's like, that guy did fucking Pretty Hate Machine. Wow.
Like you produce Pretty Hate Machine like that. Just
yeah. So John was very patient. I definitely got the COVID blues hard, like when everything was happening. So I was on and off for a little bit, and that's over now. And the machine is rolling again. But he had constructive feedback. I think he made them shine. So good on you, John. Thanks, man.
Hi, Finn. Sometimes my children like to come be internet stars. So
it's okay. I have been.
I saw you had one that came up behind you there.
Yeah, Groovy likes to make his appearance. So who am I?
That was Groovy. I almost stopped you in the middle of talking to be like, on this show, we introduce cats when they make an appearance.
Yes, that is the famous Groovy. Next time I'll bring him along.
All right. So the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about here is you do have finally, because the album is coming out here for August, you have some live shows set up, some of which are extremely exciting. And you hit me with just what it feels like to be playing with some of the people you are, and tell me about where people can witness this album played live.
We just finished up a short mini tour with the Gothsicles, who are old friends.
Always fun. Brian is the best.
over the years, Brian is someone I'm very proud of, just both artistically and personally. He's a fantastic example of that stuff that we were talking earlier, of looking at yourself and making better changes. And
I think for Brian too, has a little bit of a personal hero for me in some ways, just because we're a silly fucking goth band. You know, Amaranth, like
there's nothing wrong with that.
We write goth songs about ninjas and ass play, and like we are not, you know, 1959.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
and I feel like Brian is someone that gives me courage to go out and do that, because of both making something that is great but not being up your own ass when you're doing it.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing. I mean, I'll get back to the rest of it, but Brian, I think, is very clever lyrically, and he's going somewhere a lot of people aren't, which is the funny part. And for a scene that has been maligned as much as it has with Columbine and all what have you, we could use more Brian Grobners, someone who say, okay, this is just us being silly, like anybody else. So
hold my beer. Wait till you hear this next Amaranth album.
I'm looking forward to it.
But so now your shows you did with I just said the Gothsicles.
Yeah, we did Easton, which has a fantastic club night called Coven. Easton, PA. We did Brooklyn. We did Philadelphia. We did Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is the place. We're kind of energized right now, so we want to get in and write another record immediately. But as it turns out, there was one more gig that we got offered, and I can't believe I'm saying this. This is just the kind of thing that says, take the leap, kids. You may find out the dreams come true. We are playing a brand new club in Lancaster, Pennsylvania called Phantom Power, with a band that you may have heard of called Front 242.
Front 242. You know, that does ring a bell.
Yeah, they did that Der Kommissar song we were talking about earlier.
There was a young man in 1992 in Clarkston, Michigan, that went to Lollapalooza, and among other things, saw a band called Front 242 play over at Lollapalooza there, and it was a very quintessential moment for me in shaping and opening my eyes as a wee lad.
As the first record I heard in this scene that wasn't Nine Inch Nails was Tyranny for You. In that town we're playing with them in. So it's this fucking weird, deeply gratifying and bizarrely satisfying full circle. But we're going all out for it. They are going all out for it. From what I hear, there might be some new Front 242 songs on the horizon, and you might get to hear some of them.
You also recently, so that I don't skip over it, did a Distortion Records production with our good friend Jim.
That's right. With Jim and
Saphira, and
I love them all. They're great people. They're super cool. We didn't get to go. We got exposed. We were exposed.
Oh, that's such a shame.
Oh, dude, it sucks.
I was trying to get someone to go with me. I was asking everybody, and I was going to do a road trip out there because I do a song on Saphira's album where I did backup vocals for it. And I was going to show up as a guest appearance because she couldn't find anybody to do that part. So she was going to try and do it herself. And I was going to show up at the 0 hour and be like,
yeah, I mean, I'm really happy and proud of how Jim is growing the label. It's got some diversity to it now, and I'm looking forward nothing but good things for Jimmers. We will get out there. That venue is very nice too. That Black Forge Coffee.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pittsburgh. We will see you soon.
So this has been a wonderful discussion. We covered a lot of ground here. Do you have any other parting shots of things that you're excited for in the future before I ask you the very hard question?
I'm looking forward to more Panic Lift. I think he is super, super underrated. I have we want to get out on the road and we want to meet you. We very much
There's always a show waiting for you in Kalamazoo. Get on out here. We have a surprisingly sweet goth scene. You would love it. Have a blast.
We love to play live. So if you guys want to do it, we do too. So get at me. Aside from that, we're going to get back into the studio. I have a whole bunch of new equipment that I'm going to play with. Then I'm going to go open up for my childhood favorite band.
What's your favorite new toy there that's going to be coming up for this new record?
Oh, that's a great
question. For the gearheads out there in the audience.
For the gearheads out there in the audience, it is a combination of the Korg Wave State, which is a digital synthesizer.
Nerd.
Fucking huge nerd. That is partially the reason I mentioned that is because all those weird ass skinny puppy atmospheres were in fact its predecessor, the Wave Station. That was one of the 2 or 3 Dwayne Godel synths. The other one is, and this is the first Novation synth that I've actually liked. I've since got the Base Station 2 and I really enjoyed it. The Novation Peak.
Ooh.
Which I played at Cold Waves and decided I need to have one of these. It is fantastic. It was designed by the guy that designed the Wasp, the old school synthesizer, the Wasp, and I believe also the Oscar.
Ooh, wow. We've learned history here. I wish Colin was here right now so that he would know what you were talking about. But instead, I'll just
ultimately, I think. Don't get me wrong, I love the gear, but by the same token, the idea is what matters.
True.
In any creativity. The rest of that is just finding the way to get there with what you have. And
see, I find I say that a lot, but it's just because without Colin, I don't know shit. And so I depend on him to know all that stuff. So I could be like, why does that matter? It's all about the higher poetic license that I'm taking and the but only because he's laying sick beats behind it and I can get away with doing that,
Sure.
So the last question that I have for you is here on Sounds and Shadows, we always like to spin out to a song off the new album of the artist. And of all of these wonderful songs, what is the one that you feel if someone is hearing Silver Walks for the very first time, what is the track that you feel epitomizes you on this album?
On this album?
And we will use it to spin out.
In a certain sense, I would say it's Inconsequence because it's a lesson in contrasts. Mark is known for his heavy, angry, aggressive style. Mm-hmm. So there's something poetically fitting about him taking on the poppiest track of the album. And he nails it. And more importantly, he nails the spirit. It's this, in this instance, it's very uplifting music with a deeply, deeply sad song.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going for. So those contrasts, those emotional contrasts. So
Daniel, my friend, it has been a true pleasure having this discussion with you. I look forward to the release of the album. I look forward to finding a way that we can get out on the road and we can play together and hang out. And I look forward to you joining on the Sounds and Shadows family to start writing some reviews and being a part of spreading the good word of the darkness.
I'm grateful to be here. It is always a pleasure. If you want to hear the record, you can do it on August 3rd, anywhere, streaming. If you want to get a little bit of a head start, you might go to silverwalk.bandcamp.com. I look forward to playing some shows with you and with anybody. Get at me and let's have some fun.
I will include those links below and everyone enjoy. This is Inconsequence, Silver Walks. Everybody out there in interweb land, keep it dark, yeah.